She gave her blood to save a hybrid wolf. The Alpha King awakened and claimed his Omega. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Lily Andrews had always been different from the other Omegas. In a world where power and strength ruled, she had nothing but her quiet resilience and an unshakable belief in kindness. Lily was born into a pack that rejected her from the start. The other wolves saw her as weak, a burden, and they never missed a chance to remind her of it. Lily, though, never let their harsh words define her. She had learned to keep her head low, to survive in a world that would rather see her disappear. But deep inside, a part of her still longed for something more. One cold evening, as the moon bathed the forest in silver, Lily wandered into the woods to clear her mind. That's when she found him, a wounded hybrid wolf. His fur was matted with blood, his breath shallow, but his eyes, they glowed with a strange, haunting intensity. At first, Lily hesitated. She had no reason to help this creature, a wild animal, and it was far beyond her skills to heal. But something inside her stirred, a pull she couldn't explain. The wolf's amber eyes seemed to speak to her, a silent plea for help. Without thinking, she knelt beside him. Her hands trembled as she examined his injuries. It was clear he wasn't just any wolf, he was something more. His body was large, almost too large for a wolf, and there was something regal about him despite his obvious pain. "I can help you," she whispered, even though she wasn't sure how. And so, she did. Lily carefully tore a strip of cloth from her dress and pressed it against his wound, applying pressure. But it wasn't enough. The wound was too deep. There was only one thing she could do. Taking a deep breath, Lily sliced her palm open with a sharp rock she found nearby. She held her hand over the wolf, letting her blood drip onto his fur. It was a desperate move, but somehow, she knew it was the only way. The moment her blood touched him, something extraordinary happened. The wolf's body seemed to shift. His breathing steadied, his wounds began to close, and the glow in his eyes intensified. Then, to Lily's astonishment, he shifted. The wolf's form morphed into that of a man, tall, with striking features, and eyes that still held the intensity of the creature she had just saved. It took her a moment to realize this wasn't just any wolf. This was Alpha King, the ruler of the Northern Territories. As his transformation completed, he stood, towering over her, his regal presence overwhelming. The cold wind around them seemed to part as he stepped forward, his gaze locking with hers. "You saved me," he said, his voice low and filled with awe. "Why?" Lily couldn't find words. She was still in shock, her heart racing from the intensity of the moment. But before she could answer, the Alpha King took a step closer, his eyes softening as they studied her. "You have given me your blood, your life. I can feel it. And for that, I claim you as mine." The world around Lily seemed to shift. She didn't know what was happening, but in that moment, she felt an undeniable pull toward him, a connection that went beyond anything she had ever known. This was no longer just a man. This was her fate, her future. And though she was an Omega, the Alpha King had claimed her as his mate. A bond forged in blood and destiny. As the days passed, Lily found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The Alpha King's claim of her as his mate echoed in her mind constantly, a reality she still struggled to accept. She had known hardship all her life, but never had she imagined being chosen by someone of such immense power. In the days following their first encounter, she had remained in the forest, unsure of what to do next. The Alpha King, whose real name was Kalen Thornridge, had insisted she accompany him back to his kingdom, a place she could never have dreamed of. The first night they spent together in the forest was quiet, save for the rustling of the trees and the distant howl of wolves. Lily had slept restlessly, her mind racing with the events that had unfolded so suddenly. Kalen had slept nearby, though Lily had no idea how he could rest. His body was still recovering from the curse that had bound him for so long. But in the morning, when the light of the sun touched the earth, he woke with a calmness that surprised her. His presence was no longer intimidating but soothing, though she still felt the weight of his claim on her. "We must go," he said, his voice deep and commanding. "The pack awaits our return." Lily nodded, feeling both fear and excitement stir in her chest. She had no choice but to follow him, and yet, a part of her yearned for the safety of her old, familiar life. As they made their way through the forest, Lily couldn't help but feel the weight of Kaelin's gaze on her. She had always been an outsider, rejected by her pack, but now she was walking beside the very Alpha King. He had claimed her as his mate, and she could not escape that truth. "You don't have to be afraid," Kaelin said, sensing her unease. "I will protect you, Lily. You belong to me now, and nothing will harm you." His words brought a sense of reassurance, though she still had her doubts. Could she truly belong in a world so different from her own? They arrived at the borders of his kingdom by midday, and Lily was struck by the sight before her. The walls of the kingdom stretched high into the sky, an imposing fortress that seemed to hum with power. As they approached, the guards at the gate stood at attention, their eyes following Kaelin with awe and respect. "Alpha King," one of them greeted, bowing his head. "We have prepared for your return." Kaelin nodded, his eyes never leaving Lily as he spoke. "This is Lily, my mate. She is to be treated with the respect she deserves." The guards hesitated for a moment, their eyes flickering with surprise, but they quickly bowed in acknowledgement. "As you command, Alpha King." Lily felt a sense of discomfort, not from the guards, but from the overwhelming shift in her world. She had gone from being an outcast to being thrust into a world of power, where her every move seemed to matter. Kaelin led her through the gates, and they entered the heart of the kingdom. The castle was magnificent, with towering spires and intricate carvings adorning every wall. It was a place of ancient beauty, steeped in history and tradition. Lily had never seen anything like it. As they walked through the halls, servants bowed in their path, and Kaelin spoke to them with ease, his voice carrying the authority of a ruler. But it wasn't the grandeur of the castle that caught Lily's attention, it was the way Kaelin looked at her. His gaze was steady, full of something she couldn't quite name. It was a mix of admiration, protectiveness, and perhaps something more. As they reached the royal chambers, Kaelin turned to her. "This is where you will stay," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I promise you, Lily, you are not alone. You are mine, and I will never let you go." Lily nodded, her heart racing as she stepped into the room. The space was luxurious, with plush furnishings and a large window that overlooked the kingdom. For the first time since their encounter, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. Kaelin had claimed her, and now she was his. Whether she was ready for this or not, her life had changed forever. As days turned into weeks, Lily began to adapt to her new life within the castle walls, though the weight of her transformation was still heavy on her heart. Kaelin, the Alpha King, had claimed her as his mate, and though the words were sweet, they came with responsibility, pressure, and a world that she had never known. She had spent her entire life hiding in the shadows, rejected and isolated, but now she was thrust into the center of a kingdom, where her every move was watched by both allies and enemies alike. Each morning, Kaelin would greet her with a smile that made her heart race, but he would quickly return to his duties, leaving her to navigate this new world on her own. She was learning the ways of the pack, the hierarchy, the politics, but it wasn't easy. The people of the kingdom, though respectful, looked at her with curiosity, as if they were waiting for something to change. Lily couldn't help but feel like an outsider. She was a rejected Omega from a small pack, and now she was expected to step into the role of the Alpha King's mate. What did that even mean? The other members of the pack were powerful, strong, and confident. Lily, on the other hand, felt like she didn't belong. She spent hours wandering the castle's gardens, lost in her thoughts, trying to make sense of everything. The scent of flowers and the gentle breeze were soothing, but they couldn't erase the feeling of uncertainty that lingered. One afternoon, while she sat beneath an ancient oak tree, she felt a presence beside her. Looking up, she saw Kaelin standing there, his imposing figure filling the space with an undeniable aura. His silver-gray eyes softened as he looked at her, and for a moment, the harshness of his past melted away, leaving only the man who had claimed her. "Lily," he said, his voice tender, "you don't have to feel like you don't belong here. You are as much a part of this kingdom as anyone else. You are my mate, and that means more than anything else." Lily looked down at her hands, unsure of how to respond. She had never been good at accepting kindness or affection. It was easier to hide, to pretend she wasn't worth anything. "But I'm not like them," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I'm just a broken Omega." Kalen knelt beside her, his gaze steady and full of warmth. "I see more than just an Omega," he said softly. "I see a woman who saved me, who gave me her blood and her life without a second thought. You are stronger than you realize, Lily. Don't let anyone, not even yourself, make you believe otherwise." His words, though comforting, only deepened the turmoil inside her. She wasn't sure she could live up to the expectations that came with being the mate of the Alpha King. And yet, every time she looked into Kalen's eyes, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she wasn't broken after all. Maybe she could find a place in this kingdom, by his side. As the days went on, Kalen began to trust Lily more and more, and he started to share the burdens of his kingdom with her. He spoke of the challenges he faced, the battles he had fought, and the legacy he hoped to leave behind. She listened, offering him comfort in ways that surprised both of them. She wasn't just the weak Omega anymore. She had become his confidant, his partner in a world that was both beautiful and dangerous. And yet, despite the progress they had made, there were still moments when Lily felt like she didn't belong. During one of the royal banquets, as she stood by Kalen's side, she felt the weight of the eyes on her. The nobles whispered, their gazes flicking to her in curiosity and judgment. "Look at the Alpha King's mate," one woman murmured. "She's just a lowly Omega. How could she possibly be worthy of him?" Lily stiffened, but Kalen's hand found hers, squeezing it gently. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Ignore them," he said softly. "They don't know you like I do. They don't see the woman who saved me. The woman I will always protect." His words, though meant to comfort, didn't quite reach her heart. She could feel the weight of their judgment, the coldness that came with being an outsider. But Kalen's presence was a balm for her soul, and as the night went on, she began to realize that maybe, just maybe, she could find a place here. With him. Despite the challenges that lay ahead, despite the whispers and the doubts, Lily knew one thing for certain: her life would never be the same again. Kalen had awakened something within her, something she had long thought was lost. She had a purpose now, a reason to stand tall. And no matter what the world thought of her, she would face it head-on, alongside the Alpha King. Days turned into weeks, and Lily began to adjust to life as the mate of the Alpha King, but that didn't make her feel like she truly belonged. She had thought things would get easier, but each day brought new challenges, and the weight of the kingdom's expectations weighed heavily on her. She was still the Omega, the one who had been cast aside by her own pack, now thrust into the role of the Alpha King's mate. Though Kalen treated her with kindness and respect, the world around her did not. The nobles continued to whisper, their eyes following her wherever she went. They saw her as a weak outsider, someone who did not belong in the royal palace. And Lily could feel the sting of their judgment, no matter how much she tried to ignore it. One evening, as she walked through the castle gardens, Lily found herself once again feeling lost. The garden was beautiful, with flowers in full bloom and the scent of the evening air filling her lungs, but it did nothing to ease the storm brewing in her heart. She had spent most of the day in the palace, observing Kalen's meetings with the pack leaders, listening to the discussions of war and diplomacy, and all the while, she felt more out of place than ever. She was no strategist, no leader. She was just an Omega, a woman who had given her blood to save a hybrid wolf, and somehow, that had led her to this world she didn't understand. But Kalen had insisted that she stay by his side, that she had a role to play. "You are not just an Omega," he had told her many times. "You are my mate. You will stand beside me, and together, we will rule." But Lily was unsure of what that meant. And he pulled her closer. "Lily," he said, his voice firm yet gentle, "you don't have to live up to anyone's expectations but your own. You are enough just as you are. And I will never ask you to be anyone but yourself." Lily looked into Kaylin's eyes, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of peace settle in her chest. Maybe she didn't have to be perfect. Maybe she didn't have to be the strong, powerful woman the kingdom expected her to be. Maybe, just maybe, she could be enough. Kaylin smiled at her, his silver-gray eyes soft with affection. "Come," he said, taking her hand and leading her through the garden. "Let's go inside. There's a banquet tonight. The pack leaders are waiting for us." As they walked together, side by side, Lily couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging she hadn't felt before. For the first time, she felt like she had a place here, with Kaylin by his side. Maybe she wasn't just the Omega. Maybe she was something more. Maybe she could be his equal. As they entered the castle, Lily took a deep breath, ready to face whatever the future held. With Kaylin by her side, she knew she could face anything. She might not have all the answers yet, but she was no longer afraid to try. She was no longer afraid to be herself. The banquet hall was filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses, but Lily felt a sense of unease settle in her chest. It was her first official event as Kaylin's mate, and she was surrounded by unfamiliar faces, nobles, warriors, and pack leaders. They all looked at her with curiosity, their eyes lingering on her in ways that made her skin crawl. She knew they were waiting for her to prove herself. Kaylin, as always, stood beside her, his presence a solid wall of reassurance. His hand rested gently on her back, and she felt the warmth of his touch, a comfort amidst the uncertainty. "Don't worry," Kaylin said softly, leaning toward her so only she could hear. "You belong here, Lily. Just be yourself." But even as he spoke, she felt the weight of the room's gaze on her. She wasn't sure if being herself was enough. She had always been the quiet, rejected Omega, the one who had no place in the world. But now, standing by Kaylin's side, she was expected to be someone else, to be strong, confident, and capable of taking her place beside him. Her heart raced as she glanced around the room, noticing the subtle whispers and the sidelong glances from the pack leaders. They spoke in hushed tones, their words carried by the wind to her ears. "She's just an Omega," one voice said. "How could she be the Alpha King's mate?" "Does she have what it takes to stand by him?" another murmured. Lily clenched her hands together, trying to steady her nerves. She hated the whispers. She hated the feeling of being judged before she even had the chance to prove herself. But just as the anxiety threatened to overwhelm her, Kaylin's voice cut through the noise. "Enough," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You will show respect to my mate." The room fell silent. Every eye in the hall turned to Kaylin, his commanding presence filling the space. Lily felt the tension in the air, but she also felt something else, a sense of pride that surged within her as she stood by his side. Kaylin had never hesitated to defend her, to stand up for her when others doubted her. And in that moment, she realized something important. She didn't have to prove herself to anyone but herself. She was his mate, and that was enough. As the evening wore on, Lily began to relax. She engaged in conversations with some of the pack leaders, slowly gaining their trust, even if it was just a little bit. She was still unsure of her place, but she was learning. She was learning how to hold her own in a world that had once rejected her. Kaylin, too, was ever present, offering guidance when needed and standing back when she needed space. He trusted her to make her own decisions, and that trust gave her a newfound strength. As the night came to a close, Lily found herself standing alone on the balcony, the cool night air brushing against her skin. The stars above were so bright, so full of life, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of connection to them. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't the outcast. She was Kaylin's mate, and that meant something. The soft sound of footsteps behind her made her turn. Kaylin stood there, watching her with a look of quiet affection. "You did well tonight," he said, his voice gentle. Lily smiled, though it was small. "I'm still not sure I belong here," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Kaylin stepped closer, his presence surrounding her like a protective shield. "You belong with me," he said firmly. "You always have." His words, simple but powerful, settled over her like a warm embrace. In that moment, Lily realized that maybe she didn't need to belong to the world. She only needed to belong to him. And in his eyes, she already did. As the days passed, Lily began to feel more comfortable in her new life beside Kaelin. The kingdom, though daunting at first, was slowly becoming her home. The once imposing halls now felt familiar, and the cold whispers of the nobles seemed to lose their sting. She still struggled with self-doubt, but Kaelin's constant support and belief in her gave her strength. One morning, Kaelin invited her to join him in a meeting with the pack leaders. It was an important gathering, discussing the security of the kingdom and the expansion of their territory. Normally, Lily would have stayed in the background, but Kaelin insisted she sit at his side. As the leaders arrived, they gave her polite nods, some more respectful than others. Lily felt their eyes on her, but this time, she held her ground. Kaelin noticed the change in her demeanor and smiled, proud of her quiet confidence. "Today, you will see how we make decisions together," he said, his voice filled with encouragement. As the meeting began, Kaelin spoke with authority, guiding the discussions with ease. Lily listened closely, learning more about the complexities of running a kingdom. She found herself drawn into the conversation, offering a suggestion here and there. To her surprise, Kaelin welcomed her input. "That's a good point, Lily," he said in front of the pack leaders. "You have a sharp mind. I'm glad you're here." His words warmed her heart, but also made her feel the weight of her new role. She wasn't just the Alpha King's mate anymore. She was becoming an active part of this kingdom's future. The meeting ended on a positive note, with a new strategy for defending their borders. As the leaders filed out, Kaelin turned to her with a proud smile. "You did well today." Lily smiled back, feeling a sense of accomplishment she hadn't expected. "Thank you," she replied softly. "I'm starting to understand more of what's going on around here." Kaelin's smile softened, and he reached for her hand. "You've always had the potential, Lily. You just needed to believe in yourself." Over the next few weeks, Lily's confidence continued to grow. She spent more time with Kaelin, learning about his leadership and the responsibilities that came with being the Alpha King. She also began to form her own relationships with the people of the kingdom. One evening, she found herself in the castle's library, a quiet space filled with books and scrolls. She had always loved reading, but she never had the time or opportunity when she was younger. Now, in the peaceful solitude of the library, she could escape into different worlds, learning about the history of her people, the legends of their ancestors, and the laws that governed the kingdom. Kaelin often joined her there, sitting beside her as they read together. Though their lives were filled with duties and expectations, these quiet moments between them felt like an escape, a reminder of the bond they shared. One day, as they sat together in the library, Kaelin looked at her with a thoughtful expression. "Lily, I know this hasn't been easy for you. I know you've had doubts about yourself, but I want you to know that you're not just my mate. You are an equal in every way." Lily looked up from the book in her hands, meeting his gaze. "I don't feel like an equal," she admitted. "I feel like I'm still learning, still finding my place here." Kaelin reached for her hand, holding it gently. "You're not just learning, Lily. You're growing. And I'm proud of you. I don't expect you to be perfect. I expect you to be yourself, and that's more than enough for me." His words meant more to her than she could express. She had spent so much of her life feeling worthless, but Kaelin made her feel valued, important. She wasn't just a pawn in his kingdom, she was his partner, his equal. And for the first time, she believed it. As they sat there, the silence between them was comfortable, a sign of the deep connection they had forged. Kaelin had given her a chance to prove herself, and she was starting to see that she was more than capable of rising to the challenge. She wasn't just the Alpha King's mate. She was Lily Andrews, a woman who had saved him, who had stood by his side, and who would continue to stand beside him as they faced whatever came their way. And in that moment, she realized that she had finally found her place, not just in the kingdom, but in her own heart. As Lily's connection with Kaelin deepened, so did her understanding of the responsibilities that came with being the Alpha King's mate. She was no longer the timid, unsure Omega who had first stepped into the kingdom. She had transformed into a confident woman who had a voice, a role, and a future. But as with all transformations, there were moments of uncertainty, moments where doubt crept in, making her question if she could truly live up to the expectations of the kingdom. One morning, as Lily sat in the royal garden, the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze seemed to echo her thoughts. She had been spending more time in the garden, finding peace among the flowers and the quiet hum of nature. It was here that she could reflect on everything that had happened since she met Kaelin. The wind carried the scent of pine and wildflowers, and Lily closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to feel the calm. She had never expected to find such peace in a place that was so far removed from her past life. The sound of footsteps approaching broke her reverie, and she turned to see Kaelin walking toward her. His silver-gray eyes were soft, his expression warm. "I thought I might find you here," he said, smiling as he sat down beside her. "This is my quiet place," Lily replied, her voice calm but tinged with something deeper. "It helps me think." Kaelin looked at her, his gaze steady and understanding. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his voice low and inviting. Lily hesitated, feeling the weight of her thoughts. She had been feeling a shift within herself, a push to do more, to be more, but also a fear that she wasn't enough. "I've been thinking about the future," she said slowly. "About my place in all of this. Sometimes, I feel like I don't belong here. Like I'm not strong enough to be the mate of the Alpha King." Kaelin reached for her hand, his touch grounding and reassuring. "Lily," he began, his voice firm yet gentle, "you are stronger than you think. You may not see it yet, but you have already proven your strength. You've been by my side through everything, and I know you'll continue to stand with me." His words brought a sense of calm to Lily's heart, but her doubts lingered. "But I'm not like the others," she said quietly. "I'm not like the powerful warriors or the nobles. I don't have that strength." Kaelin smiled softly, his eyes filled with tenderness. "That's not what matters. What matters is that you have something far more important than strength. You have compassion, loyalty, and a heart that is true. Those qualities are what make you the mate of an Alpha King. You're not here because of some strength that can be measured. You're here because of who you are." Lily felt the weight of his words sink in, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was enough. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Kaelin stood and extended his hand to her. "Come," he said, "there's someone I want you to meet." Lily stood, taking his hand. As they walked together through the palace, she couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. She had once been an outcast, rejected by her own pack, but now, she was walking beside the Alpha King, and together, they were forging a future that was theirs to create. Kaelin led her to a room near the heart of the castle, where a small gathering of trusted advisors and warriors were waiting. They greeted her with respect, and Lily could feel their eyes on her, but this time, it didn't feel like judgment. This time, it felt like acceptance. Kaelin addressed the group, his voice strong and authoritative. "This is Lily," he said, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "She is not just my mate. She is a leader in her own right, and she will be an equal partner in all that we do." The room was silent for a moment, but then a quiet murmur of agreement spread through the group. For the first time, Lily felt like she wasn't just standing in Kaelin's shadow. She was standing beside him, as his equal, and together, they were going to build a future that was built on trust, strength, and mutual respect. And in that moment, as she looked into Kaelin's eyes, she knew that she had found her place not just in the kingdom, but in her own heart. As the weeks went by, Lily's role as Kaelin's mate continued to evolve. She was no longer the unsure woman who had first stepped into his kingdom. The castle, once filled with cold stares and judgment, now felt like home. The pack, though still curious, began to accept her more each day. She was becoming a true part of Kaelin's world, and she could feel the shift within herself. No longer did she hide in the shadows or question her place. She was Lily Andrews, Alpha King's mate, and her strength was not defined by the expectations of others. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, Kaelin took Lily's hand and led her to the courtyard. The air was crisp, the scent of pine filling the evening air. The kingdom was alive with the buzz of preparation, for the moon festival was approaching. It was the most important event of the year, a time when the entire pack gathered to celebrate the bond between the wolves and the moon. For Kalen, it was not just a celebration, it was a time for him to reaffirm his leadership, to show his strength, and to demonstrate the power of his bond with his mate. Lily, Kalen said, his voice soft yet filled with purpose, the festival is not just a tradition. It's a symbol of our unity. Our pack, our kingdom, all of it depends on the strength of our bond. You and I will stand before them, together, as equals. Lily nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She had come a long way since her first days in the castle, but this was different. This wasn't just about her standing by his side, it was about showing the entire pack that she was worthy of being the Alpha King's mate. I'm ready, she said, her voice steady. Kalen smiled, his eyes softening as he looked at her. You've already proven you're more than ready, Lily. But this night, this is about us. Our bond. The night of. The festival arrived, and the entire kingdom gathered in the grand courtyard. Lanterns hung from the trees, casting a warm glow over the crowd. The air was filled with the sounds of music and laughter, but Lily could feel the weight of the moment. She stood beside Kalen, his presence a constant reassurance as the pack leaders and warriors gathered around them. The moon rose high in the sky, its light casting a silvery glow over the kingdom. As the ceremony began, Kalen and Lily stepped forward, hand in hand. The pack leaders bowed in respect, and for the first time, Lily didn't feel like an outsider. She wasn't just Kalen's mate, she was part of something much larger. As the ceremonial chants filled the air, Kalen turned to her, his silver-gray eyes locking onto hers. Tonight, we reaffirm our bond, he said, his voice strong and filled with conviction. Lily, you are my mate, my partner, my equal. Together, we will lead this kingdom. The crowd fell silent, the weight of his words settling over them. Lily's heart swelled with pride as she looked at Kalen. She had come so far, from being the rejected Omega to standing beside him as his equal, ready to face whatever challenges came their way. The ceremony continued, and as the final words were spoken, Kalen turned to her and kissed her forehead, sealing their bond before the entire kingdom. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Lily's heart soared. She was no longer the woman who had been cast aside, she was the Alpha Queen, standing beside her mate, ready to lead. The rest of the night was filled with celebration, but for Lily, the most powerful moment came when she and Kalen stood together, gazing at the moon. The bond between them was undeniable, and in that moment, she knew she had found her place, not just in the kingdom, but in Kalen's heart. She wasn't just his mate, she was his equal, and together, they would rule. And as the moon bathed the kingdom in its silvery light, Lily felt a sense of peace she had never known. She was no longer the outcast. She was home. As time passed, the kingdom seemed to grow stronger under Kalen and Lily's leadership. The Moon Festival had been a turning point, not just for Lily, but for the entire pack. It was a night where the kingdom had truly embraced her, where the people had seen her not just as the Alpha King's mate but as a force in her own right. With every passing day, she felt more at home in her role, though there were still moments when doubt crept into her heart. Those moments came less frequently now, but they still lingered. It was during one of those moments of uncertainty that Kalen found her. Lily had wandered into the castle gardens again, this time alone. She often found solace in the quiet of the gardens, a place where she could gather her thoughts. The flowers were in full bloom, and the air was warm with the promise of summer. But even in such peace, her mind was restless. She was learning how to lead, how to guide the people of the kingdom, but sometimes it felt like too much. She wasn't just Kalen's mate anymore, she was his partner, his equal, and with that came a weight of responsibility she had never known. The sound of footsteps broke her from her thoughts, and she turned to see Kalen approaching, his figure tall and commanding, but his expression gentle. He had a way of sensing when something was wrong, even when she didn't say a word. "Lily," he said softly, his voice full of understanding, "what's on your mind?" She looked at him, her heart heavy with the doubts she had been carrying. "I'm not sure I'm ready for all of this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to be strong for you, for the kingdom, but sometimes I feel like I'm just pretending." Kalen stepped closer, his hand reaching out to gently grasp hers. "Lily, you are not pretending. You have been stronger than you realize from the moment you saved me. You've led with kindness, compassion, and wisdom. Those are the qualities that make a great leader. You are already more than ready. His words were a balm to her weary heart. He had always known how to ease her doubts, how to make her feel seen and valued. But even with his reassurance, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that she was still learning, still growing into her role. Kaelin gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. We are learning together, Lily. This kingdom, our people, we will grow stronger because of both of us. You are not alone in this. His words brought her a sense of peace, but they also sparked something within her, a renewed sense of purpose. She had always thought strength meant being unshakable, but now she realized that true strength was in being vulnerable, in embracing growth, and in learning from each step along the way. Thank you, she whispered, her eyes meeting his. I'll try to believe in myself the way you do. Kaelin smiled, his gaze warm and full of affection. I believe in you, Lily. Always. As they stood there in the quiet of the garden, Lily felt a shift inside her. She had once been an outsider, an Omega cast aside, but now, she stood beside the Alpha King as his equal, ready to face whatever the future held. She wasn't just his mate, she was a leader in her own right. And with Kaelin by her side, she knew they would continue to build a future together, one where strength, love, and mutual respect would guide them both. The night sky above them sparkled with stars, and for the first time in a long while, Lily felt a deep sense of peace. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. Together with Kaelin, they had a future to shape, and Lily was ready to embrace it with all the strength she had within her.